Good evening, everybody. It's February 6, 2018, 6 p.m., Oconee County Council. I'd like to call this meeting to order, and we're going to start, as usual, with our public comment session. Only one person signed up for public comment, Ms. Jean Jennings.
Good evening, County Council. I'm Jean Jennings. Tonight, I want to speak about Sheriff Crenshaw's budget. First of all, let me say I have no problem with the sheriff getting what he needs, but I do have a problem with his wants. I was at the County Council meeting when he spoke about impact fees. He didn't mention dollar amounts. I read that in the local paper. I understand now he's needing 8 more officers. I have gotten figures for last 5 years on both the former Sheriff James Singleton and present Sheriff Mike Crenshaw. And also the 2017-2018 budget. And these figures are ending. Former Sheriff James Singleton as sheriff and Sheriff Mike Crenshaw's years. Former Sheriff Singleton's budget was $6.446 million. Sheriff Crenshaw's budget has climbed to $7.9 million. That's almost $1.5 million difference during that time frame. The number of full-time employees for former Sheriff Singleton was 87. For Crenshaw, 99. The difference is 12 more for our present sheriff. Number of part-time employees for Singleton was 2, Crenshaw was 9. That's a difference of 7 more for Sheriff Crenshaw. This did not include the detention center. It went from $2.89 million for former Sheriff Singleton to $3.9 million for Sheriff Crenshaw. That amount, that's almost $1 million difference. Number of employees for the detention center went from Singleton 36 to Crenshaw 48. That's a difference of 12 employees. The extra employees were needed because of state requirements for operating the new jail. The new jail looks like something that would be located in Atlanta, Georgia, or even Washington, D.C. The old jail, with all the wasted space and extra offices not needed, could have been renovated and would have saved the county money. I am working on a list of equipment, vehicles, and so forth from the former sheriff and what the present sheriff has. I will compare the two lists. I feel municipalities should hire their own law enforcement. Any communities that are being built, the people moving in should have to fund any extra law enforcement. Same with commercial properties. If it is necessary to have more firemen, more fire equipment, they should have to pay for it. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Jennings. Any council member comments? Okay, no council member comments, then please join me for a moment of silence. Thank you. Mr. Root, please.
Please pray with me if you like. Father, thank you for this day that you've made us to rejoice, add in it to be appreciative for exchange ideas, to have nights like tonight where we can pray for a spirit of unity.
Amen. Mr. Hart, the pledge, please.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We need to approve our minutes from the special meeting of January 29th.
So moved.
Any discussion? Any changes, corrections? All in favor? Aye. Today, we have a special presentation to council by Mr. David Irwin, the CPA for Malden and Jenkins, regarding our audit.
Well, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is David Irwin. I'm with Malden Jenkins. I was the partner who oversaw this year's audit of the county's financial statements, and I certainly appreciate the opportunity to be here with you all this evening to discuss with you the results of this year's audit. Now, in addition to the financial statements, I believe you all received something looks like this. It's something called our Auditor's Discussion Analysis. This is an internal document. It's presented solely for your benefit. It gives you some information, some general information on who we are as a firm. It summarizes what we're going to be talking about here this evening. And it also gives you a synopsis of some future GASB standards that will be implemented in the upcoming years. That being said, for the most part, what I'm going to be doing this evening is briefly walking you through the financial statements. So please have those financial statements readily available. The financial statements themselves are the responsibility of management and members of the county council. Our responsibility as your auditor is to issue an opinion on these statements. We conducted our audit in accordance with governmental auditing standards and general auditing standards. And I'm happy to say that we're issuing a clean or unmodified opinion on this year's report. This is what you want. What this means is, in our opinion, the financial statements are fairly stated in all material respects in accordance with generally accepted accounting principles. In addition to the clean opinion, we don't have any audit findings to report to you all this year. So what I mean by that is an audit finding in its simplest terms when we have when we see a deficiency in internal control in financial reporting during the course of our audit. In other words, proper internal controls are not in place that would prevent or detect a misstatement in a timely manner. And errors such as that, if they are not corrected, could result in the financial statements being materially incorrect or materially misstated. Again, we had no such findings on this year's audit, so congratulations to you all on that. It's always nice to be able to come to a council meeting and present an audit and say we're issuing a clean opinion with no audit findings. That's about as good as you can get. And to me, it really speaks volumes about the hard work done by your staff. Mr. Mulder, Liddell, their staff have always been very receptive to any suggestions that we've had and seem to me to always be looking for ways to improve. They're proactive, not reactive. If something comes up during the year that Liddell has a question about, she'll call me, she'll email me, because she wants to make sure things are done right the first time. She doesn't let that compound and wait until the audit comes before she wants to bring up these questions. And by doing so, by having that constant communication throughout the year, it results in an efficient and timely and smooth audit, much like we had this year. So again, I appreciate your staff's hard work and certainly enjoyed working with them again this year. Now for a brief overview of financial statements. You all prepare what's called a Comprehensive Annual Financial Report, otherwise known as a CAFR. A CAFR goes far and beyond the basic financial reporting requirements. The first part of it is the introductory section. It includes the transmittal letter. This transmittal letter was written by management. It includes some general information on the county structure and the services that the county provides. The introductory section also includes an organizational chart, a directory of officials, and last but certainly not least, the Certificate of Achievement for Excellence of Financial Reporting. Your CAFR is submitted annually to the Governmental Finance Officers Association, otherwise known as the GFOA, where it goes through a pretty stringent review process, not only by the GFOA professional staff, but they also have a special review committee that looks at your CAFR. And when they look at your CAFR, their goal is not to assess the financial health of the county, But their goal is to make sure that there is enough information in this report so that any reader of the financial statements can assess the financial health of the county. So again, you all received this award. I think this is the 10th year in a row that you all received the certificate. So congratulations to you all on that. This is an impressive document here and one that the county should be proud of. After our audit opinion is something called the Management Discussion Analysis, otherwise known as the MD&A. This begins on page 4. It's 12 or so pages long. If you read only one section of this report, I strongly encourage you to read the MD&A. This is written by management. It does a really good job of introducing the reader and summarizing the basic financial statements, as well as giving the reader an analytical overview of the financial activities for the year. So again, if you can, please take the time to read through the MD&A. After the MD&A are the county's basic financial statements, which are broken up into 3 components. If you all will turn to page 16, you'll see the first component, which is the government-wide financial statements. Page 16 is the statement of net position for the county, otherwise known as the balance sheet. Now, the government-wide financial statements, they provide a broad view of the county's operations, similar to what you would see in a private sector business. All the county's funds are broken up into one of 2 categories: your governmental activities or your business type activities. Your business type activities is the Rock Quarries Fund and the Focus Fund. All the other funds of the county are combined in the governmental activities section. There's also a section for the county's districtly represented component unit, which is the Kiwi Fire Tax District. You'll see that on the far right. As of June 30, the county had total assets and deferred outflows of resources of around $194.8 million. That's a decrease of around $2.7 million compared to prior year. The decrease is the result of the loss on disposal of capital assets for the Focus Fund, which I'll talk about that here shortly. A significant portion of your assets are your capital assets, net of accumulated depreciation. That total around $137.5 million. County had total liabilities and deferred inflows of resources of $74.5 million. That's around $7.5 million higher than prior year. Most of this increase is due to your increase in your net pension liability. That increased around $5.5 million this year. If you all recall, in 2015, GASB 68 was implemented, which required you all to record your allocated portion of your net pension liability on the books. So that continues. You all, as with most governments, continues to have a pretty big effect on your government-wide financial statements. The majority of your liabilities, $63 million, are long-term liabilities, meaning these are liabilities that will be paid out in excess of a year. And of that $63 million, $35 million is your net pension liability. So again, as I said earlier, the implementation of GASB 68 had a pretty big effect on your balance sheet here. The county ended the year with total net position around $120.2 million. That's shown at the bottom of page 16. This is a decrease of around $10.3 million compared to prior year. The details of that decrease is shown on the next page, page 17, which is your statement of activities, otherwise known as your income statement. Now, like the statement of net position, this statement, it breaks out the county's revenues and expenditures by activities, your governmental activities and your business type activities. And again, it also includes the revenues and expenses for your discretely represented component unit. Revenues are classified as either program revenues or general revenues. Your program revenues, that's your charges for services, your operating grants, your capital grants. Your general revenues are essentially your property taxes and other taxes. And your expenses are classified by function. So your general government, your public works, public safety, this, that, and the other. But again, you had a decrease of about $10.3 million this year. It's a combination of 2 things. Again, one, your net pension liability increased by $5.5 million. And as well, your assets went down about $2.7 million due to the sale of the Focus Fund assets. So that's the result of that's what causes that decrease in net position this year. The second component of the county's financial statements are the fund level statements. And those begin on page 18. Now, this component focuses on individual parts of the county and reports the county operations in more detail than that of the government-wide statements. And for you all, of main interest to you is the general fund. You know, the general fund is the fund that accounts for the majority of the revenues received and funds expended for the county. So page 19 shows the balance sheet of the county's governmental funds. The general fund ended the year with total assets of approximately $27.8 million and total liabilities and deferred inflows of resources of around $4 million. So this resulted in an ending fund balance for the general fund of around $23.7 million. And that's an increase of around $1.5 million compared to prior year. Now, one thing to remember here, when I'm talking about fund balance, that's not what you have on hand in the form of cash at year-end to spend as you see fit. Unfortunately, that's not the case. Fund balance is simply the assets less your liabilities, the remaining fund balance in your general fund once you back out liabilities, only a portion of which is cash on hand. Additionally, one thing to keep in mind is on average, the general fund incurs expenditures around $3.5 million per month. So it's really good to see that you all have a strong fund balance as of June 30 to get you through those months of July through November when your revenues are typically down before your tax revenue comes in. The other certificate funds that are disclosed on this page is your capital projects fund and your economic development fund. These funds account for the transactions and acquisition of your capital assets and your major capital projects. Capital projects had an ending fund balance of $870,000, and the economic development fund ended the year with a fund balance of $8.2 million. And the county's remaining governmental funds none of those are large enough to warrant them having a separate column on your financial statements, so they are combined in that non-major governmental fund column to the far right. If you all did want to see any of those funds in their detail, they are shown in the back of this document beginning on page 8. If you turn to page 20, you'll see the statement of revenues, expenses, and change in fund balance for the governmental funds. The column referred to as the income statement. Total revenues for the general fund were approximately $44 million. That's around $2.5 million higher than prior year. As you would expect, the majority of these revenue derived from property taxes. That was around $34.3 million. The county also had $3.5 million in intergovernmental revenues and around $3.5 million in licenses, permits, and fees. Midway down that page, you'll see the expenditures for the year, which total around $45 million. That's around $3 million higher than prior year. Once again, no surprise, the majority of your expenditures, you have $19 million for public safety, $10.2 million for general government, and around $4.2 million for public works. And down at the bottom of that page, you'll see the increase in fund balance for the general fund of $1.5 million that I alluded to earlier, which resulted in an ending fund balance for the general fund of $23.7 million. Pages 22 and 23 shows the budget to actual for the general fund. Good news here, the county exceeded its budgeted revenues by $2.7 million. And your expenditures came in under budget by about $361,000. So, you all continue to do a good job of budgeting your revenues and expenses. So, hats off to you all on that. Two other funds I want to briefly mention are the county's enterprise funds, which again are the Focus Fund and the Rock Quarry Fund. The balance sheet and income statement for these funds are on pages 24 and 25. Now, these two funds are used to account for operations, again, in a manner similar to what you would see in a private sector business. The goal is for these funds to generate enough operating revenues to offset their operating expenses. As you can see, the Rock Quarry Fund continues to do quite well. It ended the year with operating income of around $2.1 million and an ending net position of around $7.4 million. With regards to Focus Fund, as I'm sure you all were aware, during the year the county entered into a lease agreement to lease out all the funds, the Focus Fund's capital assets and infrastructure. This lease did qualify as a capital lease under GASB 62. Therefore, what we did, we recorded a lease receivable in the amount of $6.1 million, and you'll see that on page 24 in the Focus Fund column. In addition, what we did, we took the net book value of the capital assets of the Focus Fund off the books. So you'll see the lease receivable of 6.1, and you'll notice below that the Focus Fund has no capital assets as of now, due to this agreement that you all entered into. The offsetting entry, because the net book value of these capital assets that were on the books was around $12 million, the offsetting entry is a loss on disposal of capital assets of around $6.7 million, and that's shown as a non-operating expense on page 25. And this resulted in a deficit net position for the Focus Fund of around $3.2 million as of year end. So, going forward, and Mr. Mulder, correct me if I'm wrong, there should be no operating expenses for this fund going forward. There may be the only revenue that you should receive will be the lease payment that you all have coming in over the next 20-year period. I was thinking that there may be some additional operating revenues, but that may not be the case. That's completely gone then. Okay. So this fund is going to completely just be going forward. It's going to be the money that you have coming in on a yearly basis from this lease receivable. And that money is going to essentially pay back the general fund. You know, if you notice on the balance sheet of the Focus Fund, there's I think an $8.9 million advance from other funds. That's the amount of money that the general fund has advanced the Focus Fund. So any proceeds going forward that you all receive from this lease will offset that advance from the general fund. Before I proceed, are there any questions on the Focus Fund? Again, it's a unique transaction, and I just want to make sure that any questions or concerns are addressed. Okay. The third and final component of the county's basic financial statements are the footnotes. Those begin on page 29. There really weren't any significant changes this year, so unless anybody has any comments or questions, I won't go into those in detail. You all were once again required to have a single audit this year. Now, a single audit is a compliance audit that's required when an entity expends over $750,000 in federal funds for the year. You all expended federal funds around $1.2 million for the year. These are detailed out by federal grant beginning on page 129. We are issuing a clean or unmodified opinion on the single audit, and as was the case with the financial audit, we have no audit findings to report to you all for the single audit. So congratulations to you all on that. That concludes my presentation. You know, as you can see, this is a pretty thick document. There's a lot of information in here. What I've tried to do is just hit the highlights, what I think is of most importance to you all. That being said, if there's something in here that you have a question about that I didn't touch base on, I'll be happy to answer those. Again, I feel like this year's audit went extremely well, and I just want to thank your staff for a job well done. We certainly appreciate the opportunity to be of service to you all, and look forward to working with you in the future.
Thank you. Any comments or questions?
Yes, Madam Chair. I'd like to echo exactly what he's saying. Appreciate Mr. Mulder and Adele and the staff for everything that they did. I know it's a lot to get through this, and it's always good to hear good news on an audit, because I've seen a lot of other counties that haven't been such as encouraged from that. Appreciate your
It makes
your
our job
staff
easier.
and
It makes our
everything
job
that y'all
easier
are
too.
doing,
So we appreciate that as well.
Thank you.
Any other comments?
I'd just like to echo Mr. Davis's comments, and Mr. Irwin, appreciate the work you do, and certainly really appreciate the work staff does to continue to show excellence and fiscal responsibility and keeping track of those dollars. So thank you for the good work you do.
Anybody else?
Yes, ma'am. I'd just like to say dittos.
Thanks, sir.
Thank you. Okay, Mr. Mulder, you're next.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you, Madam Chair. Before I get into the agenda summary, I just wanted to make sure I do recognize the staff for all their hard work. Most all that you see here is a result of their work, not necessarily mine. So I want to make sure that they get recognized. Ms. Sally Lowry in Liddell. Sally really takes it upon herself to manage this audit through, and really a lot of it weighs on her shoulders. So I want to make sure her name gets mentioned as well. Danielle also is a big contributor. So the whole team does a great job, and you know, I would rather you look at them and recognize them over me, because they're really the ones that play the larger role in this. You know, obviously under guidance and supervision from me, but the hard work is there. So let's make sure we recognize them more than me, please. Agenda summary. First of all, we have public hearings on two items, 2017-32. This is an ordinance that would approve the execution, or my ability to execute a lease for a piece of property that we own at 207 Crooks Road with a Mr. Kent Crooks. We've discussed this property before. It was a life estate that we became owners of fully, and the relatives asked if they could continue leasing it. We have no immediate need for the property, so I have no issues with recommending that we continue the lease to allow them to continue living at the property. Obviously, there is a pretty ironclad lease agreement that our attorney put together that you know, restricts their use to purely residential for those purposes. So we'd like to recommend we continue that for another year. 2017-33. This is an ordinance that would amend our zoning ordinance, our Code of Ordinances, Chapter 38, for our Lake Overlay District for the vegetative buffer requirements. We're really trying to tighten that down and provide more enforcement capabilities due to some of the issues we've had with some of the buffer impacts due to development lately. So the attorney and the planning staff and planning commission have done a great job in putting together this recommended ordinance for your approval. So we actually have a better ability to manage the impacts to the vegetative buffer in the Lake Overlay District. We have subsequent third and final reading of those two ordinances following. We have second readings tonight for 04. This is also an amendment to Chapter 38 that deals with the commercial section of our multifamily units for zero lot line amendment. It will allow for a zero lot line for multifamily multi-tenant, multi-use, not family, commercial, and it could be family, I guess, with apartments and condominiums. We've done the residential, so commercial. For zero lot lines for complexes that have multiple units in one building. First reading of following ordinances. This was an amendment and an addition. I do want to point out that this is 2018-05, not 07. That's a typographical error on the agenda. It's 05, not 07. This is something new for you. It's a lease agreement at the airport. We had a section of our hangars that was kind of an obsolete small area that was void, if you so to speak, that wasn't used for anything but storage, and it was used minimally for storage at that. So Mr. Garrison, our airport director, came up with an idea to modify it and turn it into a small office space that could be used to rent out. We obviously looked at internal operations to see if anybody needed anything. We talked to the sheriff about a sheriff substation. He didn't need another one in that district because he's got one coming already, so he didn't need it. We talked to him. So we went out and looked for any interested parties who may be interested in renting it for any purpose. Again, it's not big enough for an airplane. And Ms. Julie Ibrahim here has presented some interest and would like to rent it for an office space. She is very active with the airport, very involved at the airport, so it's not just somebody who has no dealings with them. So we'd like to ask you to approve the lease or approve the ordinance for us to execute the lease to allow us to utilize that space. There will be income generated off of it since she'll be paying rent for the space. First and final reading for resolutions 2018-03. This is actually an abandonment process for a road in the county that's currently maintained by the county, Emmanuel Church Drive. It's been through the Transportation Committee. We've been through all preliminary due diligence requirements and posted the property. We were asked by Mr. Welch to abandon that. He is the only resident who actually lives on the road. There are two other property owners that border the road, and neither of those have any issues with abandoning it and taking it out of county maintenance. So this would be the first county council step to approve the resolution. It would then be diverted to the judicial process for it to go through the judicial proceedings for the judge to actually issue the closing and abandonment of that road and turning it into private property. No action items. Still have a few board and commission appointments open. No unfinished or new business. We have one council committee report from Mr. Davis. No executive session tonight for the first time in a number of meetings. So that's it for your agenda.
Okay, thank you very much. We'll begin with our public hearings, ordinance 2017-32, the Ken Crooks real estate lease. No one has signed up for the public hearing for ordinance 2017-32. If anyone would like to make any comments, now's the time, or any written comments can be handed to our clerk. Okay, so on that note, I'll close the public hearing for ordinance 2017-32. Likewise, for ordinance 2017-33, no one signed up for that. That is regarding the Lake Overlay District. If anyone wishes to comment right now, we'll be happy to listen. Otherwise, written comments to our clerk. So that being said, we'll close the public hearing on that one as well. So we're ready for third reading of ordinance 2017-32.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
It's unanimous. Third reading for ordinance 2017-33.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
It's unanimous. Second reading of ordinance 2018-04, amending Chapter 38 regarding the language for commercial structures.
So move.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
It's unanimous. First reading of ordinance 2018-05 regarding the hangar lease.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Any discussion?
Yeah, real quick, this was brought up, I guess, before the commission and everything through the airport and everything like that, so they're
Yes,
all
sir, they-
knowledgeable. I know she does a lot through there, so.
Yes, they've discussed it for the last couple of months, really.
Perfect.
And again, we talked with the sheriff well before the holidays even, so they've been discussing it for quite some time.
Perfect, thank you.
Okay, and what exactly she's gonna be doing there?
She wants to set up an office space. She does a lot of, I'm gonna call it contract work with the city of or the Clemson University. And she's very heavily involved at the airport. I believe her husband was actually on the commission at one time,
Oh, okay.
many years ago. And she lives in the northern part of the county and wanted something a little closer to the university.
okay.
And seeing how she is so involved at the airport, it was a good
It's a
fit
good
for her.
spot for her,
Yes, ma'am.
okay. Okay, any other comments about 2018-05? All in favor?
Aye.
It's unanimous. First and final reading of Resolution R 2018-03. Go ahead.
I was saying so move. Motion.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor? Aye. It's unanimous.
Madam Chair, Mr. Hart was gonna ask, did you want to ask a
I
question?
was just gonna ask if all the signs and, had been posted
Post-
on it and the
Yes, sir.
time limit.
In your backup, you'll see a picture of the sign, from where it was posted, and, no comments were received, at the phone number that's listed on the sign. No written comments were received, so we should be good to go, sir.
Okay,
Okay, sorry about that.
that's all right.
Discussion, no action items, any board and commission appointments? These are still on hold. Any unfinished business? Quickly, for new business, I just wanted to hand out this handout. It's from ACOG, and it has a list of the roads in Oconee County that will be dealt with through DOT and ACOG, and the sequence of events, when it's going to happen. PE is the engineering phase and all that. For your information only. Anybody else would like a copy of this? Norm? There you go. Okay. They chose for their projects roads that are actually desperate in need of some renovation and remodeling. So let me know if you have any questions or concerns about the list. There's no other new business?
Madam Chair, one thing.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Moore,
Yes,
I'd
sir.
like to thank, the cardboard, asking people to put the cardboard in. It's a phenomenal success. I went around, and they can't run the packer fast enough.
Good.
And it just goes to show you, by asking somebody nicely, it was a complete, I mean, it's great. I mean, our cardboard sales should go through the roof now.
Good, and that's exciting for the attendant, because that's what our competition is this year amongst all the centers, is cardboard. We pulled
Well,
out cardboard as a competition.
they're all jacked up. They're doing good.
Good, good.
You okay? Okay, Mr. Davis.
All right, the Recreation Review Task Force met on January 16th. We talked about some strategic plans that I'll get to in just a moment. It's been very well attended by the cities that are mentioned here, as well as Fair Oak Youth Center, Westminster, Destination Oconee, PRT with Phil Shirley, City of Seneca, the SRO officers and Mike Crenshaw, Salem, and Walhalla has been in attendance every single time. And we've had a lot of great open discussions, and it has also allowed the cities to actually work a lot more together in some of the issues that they have in equipment and everything like that. And they may have already done this, but this at least puts them at the table where I have seen more communications across the board and gives them a chance to talk more than ever before. And from a county side of things, it helps us start to understand what the city recreations departments are trying to do, and to come up with an idea on to understand the actual health of the recreation departments was one of the goals that I moved forward with on the task force. And you constantly hear about budget, our budgets are hurting, but at the same time we also look at you know, what is the actual plan for recreation? And what we found with a lot of the cities is they plan by whatever they think that they're going to have on there. So what we were trying to figure out is if we were going to actually come up with a comprehensive plan on if there was funding opportunities for recreation, what it actually looks like. And it's not, you know, what is the improvements and everything going to be. That has been a great challenge for the cities to actually come forward with, because they have not necessarily been in that discussion. Some of the talk back from the cities has been what is that dollar figure? Well, we don't truly have a dollar figure. That's a difficult thing to come up with on there, because we're trying to operate our budgets and everything that we have on there. So that was one of the questions that they wanted to have, is back to the council, was what dollar figure are we considering? And that's, as we move forward in the budgeting process, that's something that we have to talk about, to not only, I don't believe in throwing money at a problem. I believe in providing a solution to there. The biggest concern and complaint that I got at all of it is they all get the same. No matter if you're doing 50 kids or you're doing 1,000 kids, we're getting the same amount. And no matter if all of our kids are out of county, and you know, it seems about 70% of all participants across all the board in all of our cities are out of city participants. And you know, there is some, obviously your inner city kids are actually going to pay more in taxes than your out of county. We came up with about $389 a participant to actually play a sport in Oconee County. There was a lot of positive feedback on the amount of participants has continued to grow. City of Seneca has seen the largest largest growth, followed by the Fair Oak Youth Center in percentage participation, not in necessarily numbers. And that has been the biggest thing. I think some of the neat things with some of the outer line areas, such as the Fair Oak and Salem, is they're kind of picking up for kids that can't necessarily travel, you know, 10 to 15 minutes. So they're doing a good job there. And that was one of the things that I wanted to make sure that we don't forget about the smaller recreation units out there as well, because most of them, just like Salem and Fair Oak, are doing it volunteer. There's not somebody designated to do that, so all of those are being done by volunteer. The great thing about that is we can really get down to the nitty-gritty of what it costs for a kid to actually play a sport without salary. Obviously, as you continue to grow a recreation group, whether it's Salem or Fair Oak Youth Center, you're going to have employees one day. Volunteers only go so far. Mr. Brent Taylor Wahala has been excellent working with me. Obviously, his background is recreation, and he talked about the ability to partner with the county, and the county to actually be involved in their recreation is light years ahead of what he has seen in the past, and he thinks that developing a plan together will actually keep you from going, I guess, into a financial decline. Is what we've seen on the recreational offerings. The biggest thing I think is what we've heard is, how do you take a burden off the city taxpayers for the out-of-county residents come through there? What is that dollar figure? And it's between the three cities, obviously, it's somewhere in the mix of about $200,000 to $300,000 per city is what the actual cost for an out-of-county resident to come through there. Part of the budget presentation will show these things in here, so it's a little bit more dollar figure rather than just me talking about it. So we actually, you know, can show what that loss is to the city on there. The cities, the greatest thing about the cities, the number one tourism that they have in their cities is recreation. It's a constant draw of participants through the restaurants and through the businesses and everything in there. And it's one thing that obviously keeps people moving around in this county. And that was one big thing that, you know, Sheriff Crenshaw and his group talked about is he said, you know, if you want to stop, you know, you don't have to worry about things going on during recreation season. The kids are busy, they're doing stuff. The one thing that they have been really, really concerned with is the lack of sports from 14 years and up. They have seen a steady decline of participation. If you don't make the high school basketball team, you may not have a basketball team to play on. And that was one of his concerns is how do we make sure that we keep these kids plugged in all the way through their high school area. Some recommendations that they were came back to that we're bringing to council is funding for out-of-county residents. That dollar figure is still to be determined. We will show that in the budget to kind of show what that be, not as a request, but as to show what that cost to each of the cities is for there. And another issue that they have a problem with is funding their all-star teams. Now, these are all-star teams that win the county, go to the district, which would be Greenville, win that, and then they actually travel to Columbia or Sumter or whatever else. That happens, it seems like, about 3 to 4 teams a year. When it has happened, it actually ends up being in about a $20,000 loss to the cities. And some cities have decided not to have, or a city has decided not to have all-stars. And to me, this is a showcase of not only the kids, but the city as well as the county. When these kids go outside of Oconee County, they're showcasing what Oconee County is about. And as you've seen in a lot of things, and there's been several Westminster basketball teams. The girls basketball team went a long way in the state. Several teams from Seneca and Walhalla have done the same. And as more of an award, it was one of the things that we talked about is, when you're funding this is a tourism, not only for people to learn a little bit about, okay, where's this Westminster team from? Where's this Walhalla team come from? But we spend so much money in tourism. This, to me, falls exactly under tourism. So I think we need to at least fund All-Stars a certain amount of figure, at least $20,000 a year. Now, you may have a year where you use $5,000 of it, and you may have a year that you use all of it. The reason to do this is because the kids have earned the opportunity to go this route, and it should not be a financial burden on the kids to go to this, or for the city to say, no, we're not going to let you go do that. In the last one that they had recommendation is what funding level is the council wanting to do? Is there, something that we can continue on to build on per head count rather than the $10,000 that we throw a year? So, as we grow our recreation, we're not coming back and looking at that. And so our next meeting scheduled for 3:30 Tuesday, February 20th, here in the chambers. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Okay, no executive session today, and we're basically done. Anybody have something to say before we adjourn? Do I hear a motion to adjourn?
So moved. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.